There is much controversy around the exact ethnicity of the ancient Egyptians and who the descendants of these historically important people are. Clearly, Egypt is in Africa, and as a result, most people will assume their population was black. However, it is located in northeastern Africa. Here, it has connections to the Sub-Sahara, Southern Europe, and West Asia. Naturally, there was a diverse population ranging from Semitics, Africans, and Caucasoids. It has been difficult determining the race of ancient Egyptians from strictly their art, because colors such as red, white, or black were often used symbolically for status or religious purposes, while in other cases it appears to be used for realistic skin color.
So again, we have someone claiming that it's just the skin color that is an issue when it comes to determining the race of the ancient Egyptians. But again, we're playing here. We're not talking about the skin color. The skin color of the ancient Egyptians, of course, fluctuates when you look at certain images, and some of it might be symbolic, but it's not the skin color. It's the physical appearance. It's the broad noses. It's the thick lips. It's not just one thing that you are trying to say that it is, especially the early Egyptians. Now, of course, later on, some people from other places came in. We have written evidence of this, that other people from foreign lands came in. But the early ones, the ones that they will never genetically test or release the evidence if they have, those are the ones that I'm talking about.
For the sake of academic honesty, we will go over which dynasties require the least amount of data interpretation to increase scientific objectivity. One of the most unexpected facts of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs was the DNA results of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, who ruled in the 18th dynasty from 1550 BC to 1292 BC.
Well, there's that research that we're hearing today that shows half of all Western European men are somehow related to the Egyptian pharaoh King Tutankhamun. CTV's Marilla Fernandez here with more on this. Marilla, what's up with this?
It's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
So this is coming out of Switzerland, and the researchers there have found that not only do half of Western European men have this connection, genetic profile connection, but 70% of men in Britain, which is astounding. But they all have the same genetic profile or same ancestry as King Tut from Egypt way back when.
Well, it's hard to believe. I mean, King Tutankhamun, I think, lived probably to be about 14. How did he get around with all that?
Yeah, he didn't get past his teenage years, and he only ruled for 10 years. But I guess it goes back even further than that. And here's what's really shocking about this. Less than 1% of modern-day Egyptians have that same connection. So it kind of makes you wonder, well, if he's Egyptian, but the ancestry isn't Egyptian, how did it evolve? Which way did it move? And it looks like it didn't start in Egypt, but it evolved and went to Egypt and may have started in Europe. And that's why all the Europeans have this background.
Isn't that interesting? So
That is hard to believe. So let us look for the evidence for ourselves. If you look, it's on the block at the top. It's written Royal Y chromosome lineages mummies. So you look here, it shows the predicted haplotype. Now, something you will notice here in the predicted haplotype is that they've got these small numbers right at the end. G2A, R1B, 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 L, E1B1A, E1B1A. R1B, R1B, Q, R1B. These predicted haplotypes are basically showing, the basic overall, like what type of haplotype do these people generally fall in. Now, this does not mean they do not have other genetic markers that could show easily if they belong to other groups. In fact, it shows just this. So, as we will read, we will see that Tutankhamun's DNA was incomplete, so they fill in his gaps with Amenhotep the third. But Amenhotep the third is not as straightforward as the DNA of Tutankhamun. And so if you read this entire thing, a different story will form than what you are taught by this let's say excerpt.
What's next in this kind of research?
Well, here's another thing that is going to prove interesting. They're now looking for King Tut's closest relative.
Here's an extra bonus. Look at the similarities between this news reporter and Tutankhamun in terms of their physical structures.
So they got his DNA back in 2009 from the bones left by his mummy, which were found in 1922.
That's a M-U-M-M-Y.
Yes, not a M-O-M-M-Y. So now they want to find out if they can track down his closest living relative. So people are submitting their DNA, and it will be compared, and they'll have to find as many DNA markers as they can to see who's related to King Tut, which is kind of cool. I mean, to find out one day that you have some sort of royal heritage.
Sure, isn't it enough to know that you're related somehow to Arnold Schwarzenegger with all the DNA testing?
I guess that could be exciting for some people.
Well, that's going to be an interesting study, and I guess they do talk about a 7 degree of separation between us all, and it's good to be connected with you this Tuesday. We'll look forward to seeing you again next hour, Morella. Thanks for
Brad.
this.
Pharaoh Tut's family lineage has been further verified by genetic evidence as well.
So the DNA that these people are referring to is haplogroup R1b. What this guy is not going to tell you is that R1b is also found in spotty areas in West Africa, which, you know, he's not going to reveal that information. Also, he's not going to reveal that the people who did the genetic study, which is what I'm showing in front of you, they declared that the European ancestry is probably due to the migration of people in the Middle East moving into Europe through what they think is the era of the farming times, which I think was earlier than that. I think, you know, there's a East African move into the Middle East and then into Europe, which you do not find in the rest of Africa because that move was that direction. But that doesn't mean that the people weren't black who did that movement. And then secondly, if you notice that just under Yuya, Amenhotep, Akhenaten, and Tutankhamun's DNA, you see there's two other people. It's Ramses III and an unknown man who is the son of Ramses III, and they come back E1, B1A. And this group is found exclusively in sub-Saharan African people. Now, he's not going to add this in this video because it's going to make it seem like the ancient Egyptians had a variation of DNA gene pools. So he wants to paint the picture that the ancient Egyptians were white, so he's never going to add this group into the group. So I have to add it for you. And as you can see, Ramses does not look any different than the other Egyptians. And so think about it. There's a complete DNA of Ramses and an incomplete DNA of Amenhotep. And R1b has some components in Africa, even though it's not widely distributed. It's actually in the similar region where this E1B1A is found, which is in West Africa. So this R1b that you can find is distributed in West Africa in the same place that this E1B1A is found.
His grandmother, Queen Tai, has long, flowing red hair.
Actually, if you look at Queen Tai's hair in her living state, her hair seems to have been that of dreadlocks, as you can see in these images. And they're not red, they're black. Like, they weren't blind, they depicted them as black. The red is because they put henna on their hair to preserve the hair after the person died. And obviously, they probably unraveled the hair. You can see in the image that I put next to it that the hair that is more dreaded looks more similar to the statue than like wavy long hair. The only reason that these people insist on using mummies instead of using depictions is because the mummies are vague and it's like skulls and whatever. instead of using how the people portrayed themselves in their living state, why if the ancient Egyptians are blonde, don't they depict themselves as blonde?
His father,
Ever.
Akhenaten, and his grandfather, Amenhotep III's skulls depicts clear Caucasoid features. And if you watch my video on the Wendover bog mummies, we went into much depth on how to forensically distinguish racial traits on skeletal structures.
The funny part is that the idea that you can use skulls to depict someone's race is actually very conjecturish, which is why it's ignored and opted for DNA.
Pharaoh Tutmosis IV, the great-grandfather of Pharaoh Tut, also has straight hair with a brownish-red tint.
This is a version of Amenhotep III depicting himself as extremely dark-skinned, so I don't know what this guy's talking about. Not to mention that at this time, the ancient Egyptians had met foreigners and depicted them as very different than themselves, especially those from the Middle East that they show in these various images. Look at that. Does that look like the same thing to you? The funniest part is even the people in the Middle East in this video are not depicted with blonde hair or red hair, so why is that? Now, something that you might notice is this person is going out of their way to say that the people who ran ancient Egypt were blonde, because he's trying to get away from the idea that the modern Egyptians are similar to ancient Egyptians.
Queen Thuya, the great-grandmother of Pharaoh Tut, has beautiful blonde hair. There are many other royals of Egypt who, curiously,
Another lie from the pits of hell. As you can see, she's depicted with black hair in her living state. And of course, this painting depicts her with black hair again. Again, some people would claim this is a wig, a Nubian wig. But the reason why she's got Nubian hair on her head is because she's probably related.
have European features like this, such as Ramses II, Amenhotep II, Lieutenant Yuya.
I mean, as you can see, the ancient Egyptian the ancient Egyptian paintings have black hair. This guy's beard shows us this. Not to mention that if you look at all ancient Egyptian pharaohs, they're depicted with black hair. Why would they depict themselves with black hair if they had blonde hair? Secondly, we know that they put henna on their head. They put red henna and yellow henna and all this other stuff to try and preserve their hair in their afterlife. Because, of course, preserving your hair is more important than keeping it looking like what it looked like in their real life. And why would they make it yellow? Well, maybe it's because yellow is the color of the gods. And since they're dead, they're going to heaven. Notice how Ramses in his youth is depicted with dreaded hair, while his father is depicted with jet black hair and with short dreads.
And Sitret, the nurse of Queen Hatshepsut. Blonde hair has been demonstrated to be a natural occurrence with these mummies, rather than just a phenomenon of the mummification process.
The study that is showing is one study made by someone who already had a bias for the hair to be yellow. And of course, most Egyptologists disagree with this concept. So I don't know why he's going out of his way to put this person inside as if there's like a slam dunk of, okay, of course, they had yellow hair.
The Egyptians were also known for their glorious religious art styles, tomb paintings, and statues. Many of these statues that were found, some originating as far back as the 3rd dynasty, which began in 2650 BC, were found to be staring back at its finders with blue eyes. This is important to mention because blue eyes, blonde hair, and red hair are all most commonly found in what we know today to be the European genetic lineage.
This is funny for more than one reason. First of all, if you notice, the statues he's put up there don't have blonde hair. He's actually using ones that have blue eyes caused by glass reflectant, but the actual eyes are supposed to be black in their interpretation. If you look at them at different angles, you can see that. Secondly, um, it's also funny because earlier he was claiming that the ancient Egyptian were being symbolic by painting the skin colors of the people and all this other stuff. But then now he's not going to take something that is actually symbolic, which is the eyes of the dead, and he's going to claim that that's not symbolic at all. That was a depiction of their actual eye color. What the hell?
According to Science Daily, an international team of scientists, led by researchers from the University of Tübingen and the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History in Jena, successfully recovered and analyzed ancient DNA from ancient Egyptian mummies dating approximately from 1400 BCE to 400 CE, including the first genome-wide nuclear data from 3 individuals, establishing ancient Egyptian mummies as a reliable source for genetic material to study the ancient past. The study found that ancient Egyptians were most closely related to ancient populations in the Levant, and were also closely related to Neolithic populations from the Anatolian Peninsula and Europe.
Okay, so let's read it together because he's misinterpreting the study. Um, it reveals that modern Egyptians inherit 8% more ancestry from African ancestors than the 3 ancient Egyptians do, which is also consistent with the admixture result discussed above. Absolute estimates of African ancestry using these 2 methods in the 3 ancient individuals range from. So this is the 3 individuals and how much African ancestry they have, sub-Saharan African ancestry they have. 6 to 15%, while the modern Egyptians have 8% more, right? Because they inherited, which is 14 to 21%, depending on the method of choice. See, so they're claiming that there was no admixture with black Africans, but that's not what the study says. The study says there's low admixture, not no.
Genome of the Anatolian people has been studied in the past, and in 2004 it was demonstrated that the Y DNA haplogroup R1b was the second most frequent haplogroup in the Anatolian people. As stated earlier by the study, Levants were, genetically speaking, closely related to the ancient Egyptians. Levants are a reference to modern-day people in Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, and Israel.
According to autosomal DNA to research in 2014, the ancient and modern population, the Afro-Asiatic languages likely spread across Africa and Near East by an ancestral population carrying a newly identified non-African Western European genetic component, with the researchers dubbed the Ethio-Somali component. The genetic component is most closely related to Maghrebi component and is believed to have derived from other non-African West Eurasian ancestries to at least 23,000 years ago. The Ethio-Somali genetic component is prevalent among modern Afro-Asiatic speaking populations and found at its highest level among those in the Horn of Africa. On the basis, the researchers suggest that the original Ethio-Somali carrying populations probably arrived the Near East, having crossed over into Northeast Africa via Sinai Peninsula. Okay, so if you read what this says, it says that the highest level of this genetic trait found of those people in the Levant actually is closer to the people in the Horn of Africa, so the East Africans. And again, when they say that non-African, they don't mean that they're not black. They just mean that they came from the Levant. So my question is, how does he know when they say they came from the Levant that they're talking about people of any race? Because the Levant is so close to Africa that it can literally, like, people who are black literally did leave Africa, and so it could have been a back migration of black Africans.
I believe this genetic marker is from the invasion of the West Asiatics. Approximately from the 12th dynasty to the 18th dynasty, a people referred to as the Hyksos, who were essentially Semites from West Asia, gradually settled in Egypt and began to rule from Thebes.
Everything he said in this video does not map onto reality at all, especially if you think about the fact that the Hyksos and some of those people, they were there in some of the earliest parts of Egypt. And also, what is his claim? What is he trying to say? Why is he trying to discredit all the theories of modern research? What he's saying doesn't make any sense in any way, shape, or form. Is he really trying to claim that the Middle East was just this area with blonde white people, and then all of a sudden they just vanquished?
These particular rulers took over at a time when Egypt was politically weak. It is unknown exactly why the Hyksos were violently expelled from Egypt by Ahmose I, but some speculation has suggested that it was the cultural changes the Hyksos brought, which included the mockery of their native gods. The way they tampered with their political structures by attempting to change what it means to be an Egyptian pharaoh would also imply changes to their definition of what they believed their relationship with their gods were. Egyptians were very conservative people and saw change as borderline taboo. After the Hyksos were expelled, they were portrayed as bloodthirsty and oppressive foreign rulers.
In conclusion, this video does what most other videos that like to talk about the Egyptians do. It presents only a few pieces of evidence where things look exceptional or they look different. I mean, I could do this with any country. I could go find ancient European things that sort of look black. I can look at things that sort of, I can do this thing of finding very few things and then going, oh, okay, this is evidence that there's Europeans in Africa or whatever. This is not good evidence. And, you know, we found all kinds of stuff in Europe that depict some of the Europeans having dark skin, but if you're being intellectually honest, it's going to be like, okay, well, the Europeans started with dark skin at some point, and then their skin color changed into white in order to adapt to certain, climates or whatever. Maybe not to adapt to the climate, but because of genetic mixing, or maybe even Neanderthal admixture. This is so weird. I actually don't understand what the point of all of this is. It's like, he's taking exceptions, stuff that's not even the and also all of them, if you notice, all of them are like, oh, I'm gonna use mummies. Oh wait, the mummies don't reveal what I want to show. Now I'm gonna use statues. Oh, the statues don't reveal what I want to show. Now I'm gonna use paintings. Now I'm gonna use this color. It's like every time he has to pivot to a completely different art style or whatever in order to match what he wants to believe. This stuff is pathetic, and obviously the genetic stuff is even worse. I think that one's the most horrendous, because obviously after thousands of years there would have been some mixing with people from the Middle East. I mean, they've known about them since the dawn of time, but no one's claiming that there was no Middle Eastern admixture within the people. But notice how he ignored the E1B1A or the fact that R1B can be found in Africa, and he completely goes with whatever side he wants to go with. Like, what is it that this person is trying to get at? And if he was being scientifically honest, he would have mentioned those, like, oh, okay, well, that clouds our judgment. It would have been harder for me to make this video had he done that.